It's a library, we gotta keep it quiet. All right, I think I'm gonna get it going. Sarah, we good? All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Steve Marcus, co-founder and CEO of All Classes. And on behalf of my co-founder, Chad Lovell, sitting right up front here, and the rest of the All Classes team, who's spread out in the audience here, I welcome those of you who made it here live and those of you joining us on the webcast. You're all here because we're launching All Classes. It's the world's most comprehensive search engine for both online and local offline classes. From the workplace to the life place, we help people discover and design the best version of themselves. We are the only site that covers the world of academics, personal and professional skills, both online and offline. So in front of me, we have a panel of some of the most renowned thought leaders in the education space and from industry, who we'll be hearing from in just a minute. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. So today we're going to unveil an exciting new product, the first of many, that we think has the potential to dramatically expand the $1.4 trillion education industry for students, for schools, and employers. We think this is the accelerant we're looking for, a way to get a much larger number of class providers and students engaged in learning. When we first began looking for classes, we asked ourselves, what's a class? What's a school? It seems simple, but not all classes are taught by institutions. For example, Home Depot offers classes. Would we call Home Depot a school? We'd rather call them a class provider. And we call anything with a learning objective, an instructor, and a physical or online classroom a class. And there are hundreds of millions of classes taught every year around the world. It's a lot of classes. And most class providers are not higher education. There's about 7,000 higher education institutions, and the remaining of the 250,000 of class providers are not higher education. So look, most of these providers don't have a marketing department or big budgets to attract students, and as a result, most students are really relatively unaware of the learning opportunities available to them. And we think there's a lot of great content out there already, but we think online distribution will bring even more classes to consumers. We hear from consumers that finding and registering for classes is often a painful process. It requires hours of time to research and frequently leads to a purchase decision with incomplete information. Google is often the tool people use. It's a very surgical tool to finding a needle in a haystack, but doesn't cater to consumers that want to discover content, a lot like classes. It also relegates the consumer to deciphering the particular offering from the provider. It's nearly impossible to compare and contrast products and services on Google. In fact, some of you may have seen Google has an entire product search separate and apart to solve a similar problem. Something shocked us when we started this business. No two class providers really talk about or show their content offerings in the same way. Imagine walking to a grocery store and every item had a different unit of measure, for instance. Some measured in pounds, others in kilograms, grams, or tons. It would be impossible for the consumer to effectively choose a product if they can't figure out what they're getting. And consumers are spending what could be thousands of dollars on a single class, and these can be big financial decisions with long-lived repercussions. In other words, we want the consumer to be able to discover classes on a global scale, understand what they're purchasing with vivid detail, and then make it easy as possible for them to purchase that content. We started All Classes to solve that problem. Look, we've all seen attempts at transparency, and none have really focused on the content. Most are focused on debating the merits of the institution or the degree, such as US News and World Reports. That yardstick no longer works for today's consumer. They have particular goals and want to find very specific solutions to these problems. For instance, you may want that dream job, but it requires a new set of skills you haven't yet developed or you haven't quite mastered. A generic degree may look good on a resume, but it might not help you do your job. And ultimately, we believe everybody learns differently. This is hard. As I showed before, there are a lot of classes. And comparing and contrasting 7,000 universities and thousands of degree programs seems easy when compared with more than 250,000 class providers and millions of classes that we have uncovered in our searches. The problem is becoming even more acute as new teaching and online distribution methods permeate the market, causing many of its parts to become unbundled and disintermediated, which also leads to a bevy of questions from the consumer about what they're actually purchasing. Over the past 24 months, we've seen more than 10 million students and thousands of class providers flock to online distribution platforms such as edX, Coursera, Udemy, and Udacity. We also see skills becoming outdated at enormously high rates, which is why we also see employers such as Deloitte increasingly looking at new online distribution mediums such as these to get content to their employees at a pace that keeps up with skill development. The former CEO of Barry Schuller said yesterday, the way we're consuming information is changing. I mean, things are in flux. We're learning new ways to learn. And while online is growing like wildfire, our data show that most class providers and content are still served in a nearby classroom from a live instructor. Given the state of flux, we wanted to build a product that is agnostic to distribution medium, that serves online and offline equally, and without bias. Many people choose online content because of its cost and convenience advantages, not to mention its potentially unique content. However, we believe the consumer would actively like to choose from both worlds. There's plenty of cost-effective, unique, and valuable content offered both online and offline. This is just a display of where all the offline providers are in the US. Some consumers are not yet convinced of the online value prop, and they believe they learn best when face-to-face with educators. Some consumers would choose a local class if priced right and nearby over an online class. That's why I want to show consumers the best of what's both local and online. Look, for us, a class is a class. Our job is to find ways to let the consumer compare and contrast them, regardless of whether they're online or offline. In the end, the goal of a class is to learn, and it's our job to help them decipher their choices. Our job is to create an objective and an intelligent tool that helps people cut through the clutter and easily evaluate classes based on access, quality, and cost. This is certainly an exciting time to be in education. Look, we know a lot of things about the consumer. The consumer likes to buy things unbundled and a la carte, much like iTunes. It's a great example. Masqueraded behind many degrees and certificate programs is good and bad content. You know when you bought that album and it had a bunch of crummy songs on it that you didn't want. When you go on Yelp and you see a restaurant that has 5 stars, that doesn't mean you won't end up with a bad appetizer or an entree. It just means, on average, that restaurant is good. We believe the consumer has the right to know if the content, instructor, and delivery medium are any good. Sometimes we hear people say, well, it's online. They're all the same, aren't they? It's not, they don't really have a discerning attitude toward the experience, but the truth is that these classroom experiences are different, and they can vary widely. We've been to e-commerce websites, we've all been to e-commerce websites that don't work well, even though they all sell products online. We think there will be eventually billions of classes globally that we eventually need to catalog for the consumer. Our job is to find these classes and give you the tools to figure out if the class or classes are for you. We don't want to tell you how to learn. We want to show you what you can learn and how it's taught. We offer no judgment, just clarity and transparency. We built something pretty cool. Behind the scenes is this sophisticated engine for discovering classes on the web. We've devised a system that can be fed a website and instantly detect if it's a class provider. From there, we categorize it and add it to our backlog where it's prioritized based on a variety of factors. It's our special sauce. We have proprietary tools for understanding class content and organizing on our site, and so far we've extracted more than 1 million classes. We get smarter every time we discover classes and catalog them in our system. It's only a matter of time before we've cataloged them all. Thus, we're spending a lot of time on how we can help the consumer through the mountain of classes and make a better purchase decision. And even though we have 1 million classes, we're starting with a specific category at a time. And we did that because we want to make a concerted effort to cover an entire category so that consumers in the market for those classes have sufficient choice to make their decision. It's sort of like saying I'm in the market for produce, you need to have a lot of produce in order to make my decisions. We decided to launch a segment of professional education called executive education to start. We also included a selection of classes from edX, Coursera, Udemy, Udacity, because executive education buyers have shown an interest in bulking up with some of these classes. And we're launching 10,000 of our million classes today. Initially, we think we can provide a general way for consumers to sift through classes and compare and contrast them, a lot like Kayak. Pretty typical things you expect to find in the product, like schedule, instructor, location, distribution medium, whether it's online or offline, and price. You would think price is easy to compare classes, but schools don't have a common language, a lingua franca, for which they communicate what they're selling to the consumer. So really, it's hard for the consumer to understand precisely what they should or shouldn't be paying for. We think we can make it easy. We've only scratched the surface on ways we're going to help the consumer understand their cost of education. We also think, on the converse, we think we can help both sides. We think we can help the institutions pitch the value, the true value of their content and the quality of their instruction to consumers. Every school and seller we talk to wants to participate in this. Time and again, in other markets, we've seen transparency lead to a large uptick in participation from the consumer. Take Progressive Insurance, Etsy, Airbnb, and Amazon, just to name a few. We see billions of potential students on the sidelines because they don't understand how the purchase process, or because they just aren't aware the content even exists. Many major brands have classes, places like Disney Institute, Sotheby's, Christie's, and even the FBI have classes that consumers can take. Many of you never even knew you could take classes at these places. And stay tuned, because we're rapidly introducing new categories for more than 1 million classes, and once we hit this mark, we'll be dramatically larger than anything else that's in the market. So I'd like to give you a demo. Let's see if I can get over to this thing. All right. Just make sure I got. All right, here we go. So when you hit the site for the first time, and by the way, we're going to be launching the site at around noontime, so if you do try to go to allclasses.com, it's not up just yet. When you come to the site, we're offering very typical sort of a search box for you to find, heart's desire, enter a query. We also have organized it into some categories, some common categories that we found through our content. We're also displaying a set of classes from your search behavior, anything that you've already searched through. We'll try to provide some recommendations. And we have a rotating sort of featured school. Little shout out to Peter for joining us on the panel today. We put MIT on the front page. So you can do a search a whole bunch of ways. You can just type a school in. So if you know that you really want to take classes at MIT, we have them listed in this type ahead. We also let you see some results we have for the word MIT, or for if you just type the word leadership in. We'll show you a smattering of classes specifically with that keyword in it. In this case, I think what we'll do is, and plus we do have it, obviously we're trying to do online and offline, and trying to put these in the same interface presents some interesting challenges, but you can set your location here. You can check off whether or not you want to see online results included in the local results, up to you. In this case, I'll do that. And I set my location to down the street. So I'll click on a category in here, and I get some results. Like I said, we've added in a bunch of some common sources like General Assembly, edX, Udacity, Udemy, and also the executive education cadre of providers. But when you click in one of these, actually when you click a category, you see this list of results. We try to tell you some key information about it, as in schedule, a price, where it's located, if it's online or offline. As you can see, some of these are local in Boston, and some of them are online on the right-hand side here. And we try to give you a map so that if you do want to find something very convenient to do, we let you plot it on a map. We give you some common filters, things like filter out the ones that are local, ones that are online. Also, we'll give you some categories, so if you want to go deeper into a category, we'll let you check one of these off. We'll also let you pick a local provider or a provider out of the list. So in this case, Harvard Business School and General Assembly came up. When you click into, you can also sort this list. When you click into one of these classes, we show you a nice little picture of hopefully something relevant to the place. And then we display the location for you, so you get to see that this class is at 51 Melcher Street, which is the General Assembly office. And we've pulled out all the overview. Some classes have syllabi or things that are relevant to the class. We put up here the cancellation policy so that in some cases a class has a very specific cancellation policy. In this class, or a provider has a cancellation policy. We'll give you some directions to it. And we also display on this page a little bit about the school and the related classes. So anything related to that one you just clicked on, give you some other suggestions you can click right into. And then from here, you can go straight to the class and either learn more about the class or actually book it. So there's my class. Now, another interesting thing is that if I really like Dale Bertrand and I would love to see what all the other classes that Dale is actually teaching, I can click on Dale, and up will come all the classes that Dale is teaching shortly. I think that's it. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll show you a provider page. So if I want to go directly to a provider, I get to see all of the upcoming classes for that provider. So if I really am dead set on taking a class at a certain place, or I really like the way that they teach classes, and I want to see what's coming up, I just go straight to the provider and I can see that. We also show you related providers. So if we suspect that something is similar or that you would consider that, we want to show you some related providers to it. And if the provider has multiple locations, we will list them out here. Pretty cool. And I'd like to thank our team for putting together a great product. We've been working on this for months now, and I'm really proud of where it is. So thanks, all classes team. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, so look, we've decided to list all of this content free of charge to the providers. Yes. That's right. All the traffic that we send over to providers is free. What we want to do is, the way we're going to make money, obviously we need to make money, is to develop a set of premium tools for sellers, these providers, to enhance and really get better at the selling experience and enhance the buying experience for consumers. You're going to see a lot of exciting stuff from us in the coming months. Like I said, we're just getting started. We have our iOS app coming out in June, and we have a whole responsive site of this version of the site coming out shortly. And our goal is really, we're laser focused on trying to build a great class buying experience. So right now, we're focused on trying to get as much content as we can and trying to deliver up relevant results for the consumer. And we're really trying to find new ways to compare and contrast classes so that you can come in and see what you're actually buying, which is unprecedented. People just don't, like I said, have a common language to talk about classes. And we'll be adding, obviously, millions, at least 1 million classes to the site, but we'll be adding a lot of new content areas as well. And so now I'm going to introduce my co-founder, Chad, who's going to be moderating the panel and also introducing a special guest we have from the mayor's office. Thanks, everybody.
You have to excuse me, I kept myself shaving this morning. Today we're thrilled to have Landon Dickey here with us. He's the education advisor to Boston Mayor Martin Walsh. Landon graduated from Harvard Business School this past May and was profiled by Business Insider as one of the most impressive business school students for the class of 2013. From his work with Teach for America, where he helped South Bronx students with learning disabilities, to his role as co-president of the Harvest Foundation, the only MBA student-run foundation in the United States, to his position as Marcus Foster Education Fund Fellow, Landon's accomplishments in the education space are many. Today, Landon works tirelessly to help champion education initiatives and innovative companies throughout Boston that help all people learn and grow. I'd like to welcome up Landon Dickey.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. Thank you, Stephen and Chad, for having me here today. I really believe the two of you represent what is great about our city and this new era of innovation that we're entering. Boston is home to entrepreneurs from the Innovation District to Back Bay and now to Roxbury, thanks to the vision and leadership of Mayor Walsh. But what excites me about the specific type of innovation that All Classes represents is that it's innovation that strives to serve and empower others. There's no greater investment we can make than the investment in the knowledge and skills of people. And All Classes' mission to make transparent the quality, cost, and accessibility of classes will enable a whole generation of global citizens to make smarter investments in their knowledge and skills. And Boston is very lucky that All Classes isn't the only organization in this field. In Back Bay, we also have LearnLaunch, an organization dedicated to nurturing education startups that work in the K-12 space and beyond. And in addition, since early 2013, the City of Boston has worked with edX to envision a path to bringing top-tier online courses to Boston residents. In the fall of 2013, through a flipped classroom approach, dozens of residents viewed MIT professors Bill Ouellette's course on entrepreneurship and then came out to one of our community centers in Jamaica Plain to pitch their business ideas to him. The residents were of many different backgrounds, but were bound by a simple and common goal, which was to learn and grow. As a city, we have to encourage this kind of learning. Education should not be a phase in our lives from ages 5 to 18 or 22 if you're fortunate enough to attend college. It should be part of our daily routine to expand our horizons. To me, the ceremonial booking of this first class that I'm about to engage in represents the aspirations of countless individuals who are seeking to push their education forward. It represents the incredible age we live in, where knowledge is literally right at our fingertips. Thank you again for having me as we all embark on this journey together. Awesome.
Booked it. That was easy. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh yeah. So we're going to take a quick 2-minute bio break, if you can do a bio break in 2 minutes, and then we'll do a panel. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
explosion. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of new distribution mechanisms for education, a lot of online content come about, and a lot of other opportunities to fill skills gaps. So, from K through 12, like places like Khan Academy, edX, Coursera, a lot of the online mediums for getting college content. And then beyond that, places like Creative Live, Skillshare, and other places to fill skills gap, beyond the realm of higher education. So today we've got a group of people that we've hand-selected, and we appreciate them coming here today. First, we have Nick Dukoff on the far side over there. Nick is VP of Content and Operations at Boundless Learning. He manages content team across 20 college courses read by over 3 million teachers and students monthly. Previously, Nick co-founded InfoChimps and led the company as its initial CEO prior to acquisition. And Nick started his career as a VC lawyer and is an active angel investor and Techstars mentor. Next, we have Peter Hurst. Peter's the executive director of the executive education program at MIT Sloan School of Management. Formerly, he was CEO of the commercialization, consulting, and executive education business of the London School of Economics, and has over 15 years' experience in international strategy, technology consulting, and organizational development. Next, we have Mike Baker here to my left. Mike is the co-founder, president, and CEO of DataZoo. Mike was previously CEO of mobile marketing pioneer Enpocket, acquired by Nokia, as well as chairman of mobile RTB leader NextAge. He's an angel investor in over 20 companies. So, I'd like to kick this off by, asking one question to each one of the panelists and then opening up for a few broader topics. So, Nick, why don't we start with you? Boundless has recently made a big push to engage teachers with your platform. Some platforms have focused on content curation and distributions, while others have focused on personalizing the learning experience. What are some of the challenges to being really good at both of these things?
Sure. So one of the reasons we're now focused on educators, we started the business being focused on students, is we're taking both a bottoms-up as well as a top-down approach. With over 3 million students using Boundless products every month, there's a groundswell of interest already in the classroom. But they ask the educators, tell me more about Boundless, and many educators aren't familiar with the business. And so now going through to educators and making sure that, one, they're aware of the business, and two, they understand how to use the tools in the classroom, that helps facilitate teacher-student communication.
Great. Peter, as an executive education program like MIT Sloan, the world of business changes really rapidly. How do you keep updating the content and making it really, really relevant to the people out there in business that are looking to innovate?
Well, that's a great question. I would say in the executive education space, really, it's true. A lot of the content and the programs that we want to deliver deal with the current state and future state of business. And at an institution like MIT, we're really deriving a lot of that knowledge and that expertise from the work that our faculty are doing in research in the broader ecosystem. So companies like yours that we interact with are a really great source of that kind of content. I would add that we also always have a kind sort of some of the more standard management and leadership development fare that we need to include. So one of the things that we're always trying to do is figure out what's the best balance for the needs of our customers between that standard content and the more cutting edge out of the laboratory, out of the sort of the forefront of what's going on in business. Actually having different ways to understand from our current and potential customer base where their interests and needs lie is one of the things that we're constantly striving to do.
So what would you say the balance is between creating that custom new fresh content and the staple content, like your staple strategy and operations classes?
For us at MIT at the moment, I think it's probably roughly 50-50. But that's not particularly by deliberate design for that to be the proportion. I think that's just where we end up when we take advantage of the opportunities that we can see either from our faculty coming forward with their latest ideas and proposing new courses, or from the market actually asking us for deeper insights into new fields like big data, for example.
Great. Mike, DataZoo is one of the top 5. I think it's the 5th company in the Inc. 500, fastest growing Could you give us a little advice on, what do you tell your employees when it comes to leverage the available education content that's out there and the exploiting opportunities for learning and personal development?
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of sort of emerging growth company CEOs, we actually really struggle on workforce development. And the reason we struggle is because we're thinly resourced and growing so quickly that more traditional sort of executive education programs are not an easy fit, much as we love them. So we are really focused on how to develop the skills and capabilities that especially a lot of young new managers need. And so we resort to sort of canned training. And it's really been a mixed experience. So one of the reasons I was excited by what you're doing, what All Classes is doing, is that's using the web to search and discover and compare things is really how every one of our employees, lives their lives from, buying toothpaste to looking for career opportunities. So it seems like it fills a real niche, and with a better way of doing things, maybe it's even, something trivial like search engine marketing, or maybe it's something more profound like leadership management. But we would as an employer be able to really wire this to personal development plans and get to where we want to be, which is actually compensating people professionally for learning.
That's great. So where are you getting some of that canned content from right now? Where are you procuring it?
Yeah, the canned content has come from traditional sort of business training providers who have off-site classes or who can also come on-site. So you guys, probably not in your first million classes indexed, but it's probably somewhere between class 10 and 20 million. But we had a hard time even in selecting the providers because, again, it was just kind of mixed quality and hit or miss. And there was something that could have given us a better sort of, crowdsourced wisdom as to who was good for what. That would have been extremely useful. As it was, we relied on a professional to curate and tell us what they thought was good and who the instructors, we should seek, and he curated these for us in film. And again, it was, sort of a 50% hit rate. And some of the feedback from the students, our employees was, this wasn't really tuned to my needs. And, the problem as somebody trying to sponsor education professionally is, you have very disparate need states from the students or the employees. And so, there's the need to tailor something that's more personally relevant, which the web does really well. I mean, it's out there, you just can't find it.
Right, so it goes back to the personalization piece that Nick was talking about. So I'd like to open this up to the panel now to get, kind of a widespread view on this. What's the impetus behind, the recent explosion in content, and, why now?
So I think there's two things that are happening. One is the flexibility in copyright, and two, it's easier to discover. And All Classes is also obviously helping with discovery. So one, with respect to copyright, open licenses help people in a variety of ways. One, create derivative work so that they can take the content that's out there and adapt it to their particular utility, for instance, for DataZoo and their employees, or in a particular classroom. And then with respect to discovery, I mean, the internet is just so big, there's so much out there. It's very, very hard for an individual actor to find what they're looking for. And so companies like All Classes and Boundless and others are helping those students find the relevant, high-quality content that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great perspective from a content push. I'd add to that what's the market pull, and I think the dilemma that we're all facing is there's just now so much to know and so much to learn, and fields are advancing so rapidly that the idea that you can learn something in 4 years of college and that's going to keep you in good stead for the rest of your professional career just doesn't work anymore. And so if you think about the pace of creation of knowledge and capability and what it actually takes to, for any individual, whether it's at their own volition or an enlightened employer that's really doing their best to make sure they have a highly developed and skilled workforce, there's just that's, I think, what the explosion of demand is. And so in some ways, the content development that we're seeing is a response to that demand. And what you guys in all classes are doing, which I think is very interesting, is helping put those two pieces together, because as you've discovered, they're often not very well connected. There's not a strong connection always between the demand and the supply at the moment, and figuring that out, I think, is going to be very helpful to everything that we all do.
Right. So the demand for the number of skills needed in the marketplace is just forever growing and growing and growing. You know, we hear from adult education experts, they say, you know, 40% of what you learn in any class today is going to be completely irrelevant, you know, in the next decade. And that a lot of people are going to be going into jobs that are in industries that haven't even been created yet. I mean, we look at what's happened over the past 10 years, 15 years. I mean, Google, search engine marketing, search engine optimization. The CEO of Marketo came out and said, you know, marketing has changed more in the last 5 years than it has in the last 500 years. So, you know, from a startup perspective, that's definitely what I feel. You know, we need to bridge a lot of skills gaps and learn a lot of very relevant things, you know, right now.
If I could add, I mean, I think there's a sort of almost a higher level, like philosophical point here, which is I see the need to for individuals to get better at learning, at the act of learning, and within that sort of high level topic, self-directed learning. You know, that actually becomes the sort of core skill in a lot of ways. And so even when we're interviewing people now, like if you're a programmer, you may not know Angular, but now that's the library we're using, you know. And so the questions focus on how do you learn? And I mean, I think this winds up being this sort of really important skill in life and work. And it's funny because it sort of reminds me of liberal arts, right? Which is, you know, we got to teach people how to learn rather than teaching facts and figures. And I just think that idea has never been more alive and relevant.
And that brings up a great point. So, you know, who should the onus be on? Should it be more on the individual or more on the employer? You know, who should take responsibility for telling people, you know, what they should be learning, or, you know, actually getting them to go out and do it?
Yeah, but I don't think that's an either-or question at the moment. It's more an and both. But I think you could look at questions about, you know, what does employment even look like as we move into the coming decades. The idea that, you know, a person will sort of leave college or school, have they even been to college or school, and essentially make a career with a single employer seems like it's going to become increasingly rare. And so from that point of view, surely there's got to be an onus on the individual to take care of and manage their own career and learning needs around that. At the same time, you know, companies and organizations, you know, still need to exist to get things done in the world. We're not going to get things done just with sort of individual actors all running around doing their own thing. And so a lot of what we do in executive education at MIT, for example, working with companies, is actually trying to think about what does it mean to be an organization, and how do we act as an organization in concert to actually achieve something in the world. And it's hard to imagine that you can achieve that through the lens of the individual. That's got to come from the company and the organization. So I would say it's going to continue to meet both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So, you know, next, you know, what are the biggest challenges that we face in being able to leverage, you know, all this content?
A big thing is access. You know, internet access is still not ubiquitous, and especially high-speed internet access. You see globally, a lot of countries are leapfrogging and you know, going direct to smartphone. And so I think there's two components there. One is the ability to access the internet, which is just, I would say, should be a global goal. And then second is you know, having that content be smartphone ready, because without that, you're not going to be able to reach, you know, the big numbers that really need access to high quality education.
Particularly in parts of the world which actually aren't going the wide infrastructure at all, right? They're going straight to mobile.
That's exactly right.
Great. So, you know, one of the things that I constantly hear out there is there's this constant mismatch between, you know, skills that companies are looking for and, you know, what people either come out of college with, the skill set that they currently have. So we have people looking for jobs, but at the same time, we have jobs that are open, and, you know, people are saying we can't find the people with the right skills. You know, how do we get, you know, institutions or class providers and employers, or, you know, people who are looking for skilled people, how do we get them to work together to tell people this is where you need to go to find the right skills?
I think that's, you know, in the part of MIT that I'm involved with, that's one of our classic challenges, actually, that you know, we talk a lot to other institutions, particularly universities that are in the executive education space, and you know, in our view, there's really far too low an awareness out in the market of what value is kind of locked up in our case in universities and programs that are in universities. And so that's, we haven't yet found a great and comprehensive way to solve that challenge. I think that the kind of transparency that Stephen was talking about earlier could potentially be one part of that answer, that actually enabling the search by potential consumers for the products that they need and they're looking for. If there are ways that the providers can get access to that kind of market intelligence in ways that they can make use of, then that's one way maybe of trying to close that gap. And another thing which I think we have not really yet been able to do much with, but systems like this might provide an opportunity to, is how do we actually go from inputs to outcomes? So we know how many people are coming and sitting in our programs, and they tell us how happy they were or weren't with it sort of at the end of the 2 days or the week or the month, or however long it is. It's much more difficult to actually see how are they putting this together as part of their learning needs across, in our case, across their sort of careers, and what outcomes are coming from that. And if we're actually able to get more data, which with suitable anonymization helps us sort of track what happens to individuals on the basis not only of our courses that they come to, but the decisions they're making about the learning that they're consuming. I think that might be one way of us getting a lot more insight to help us improve how we match what we can do to what the market needs.
Right.
I see a role for, I mean, for lack of a better word, certification of skill sets, and sort of the parsing up of education as a topic into its bits and pieces, because I think it's the combination of those, or sort of the pathway that would make it easier for employers to identify both the right skill sets and the right background. For that reason, companies like DataZoo, I mean, we started a learning center ourselves, creating our own curriculum. And I think that's another way that it'd be interesting someday, companies listing classes that can be discovered, because these classes are meant to train users on using our software. And it allows both education as well as certification, so that somebody has a certain level of skill. And that's a response, creating those kinds of programs is a response to the difficulty of finding qualified employees.
That's interesting, because right now the one thing about what I call small batching through education versus getting like an entire degree, that degree comes with this certain level of credibility. How do we make all those little bitty certifications and those small things that you do along the way, how do we make those to where they're extremely credible and accepted by employers? And everybody knows that if I learned this at this place, then I know this skill.
That's one of the great challenges, and another aspect of that is how do we think about just the authentication or the validity of the content as well in that kind of world. You could look at sort of crowdsourcing models like Wikipedia, and there are people who are looking at how accurate is the total content that's in there, and the answer is not always. Right. And if whether your aircraft stays in the sky where it's supposed to be is dependent on what someone learned in a class, you should care about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think we have an answer to that at the moment. You could say it's done at the moment through brand in some ways, but what might brand mean if there are 20 million different courses for people to choose between?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. This time, I'd like to open it up to the audience. So if anybody's got any questions, don't be shy. Raise your hand. We'd love to hear what you've got to ask. Anyone?
Hi, this is Jonathan Haber. I've worked on a pretty high-profile MOOC project last year, and for some reason I was getting calls about once a month with somebody who was trying to aggregate data from MOOCs and other online sources, and we always kind of had the same conversation of what content's going to be there, or what's going to be associated with the content that's going to allow people to do the evaluation you talked about, to ascertain the quality, to figure out if the learning style is appropriate. I've seen places like iTunes U, you have a little bit of crowdsourcing going on with some kind of reviews going on in courses, but I haven't seen any of the sort of third-party aggregation tools figure out, are they going to find find reviews? Are they going to, what are they going to do to nurture sort of feedback on the courses so that people have more than the sort of course blurb you're sucking in to kind of evaluate if this course is for them?
So what you're asking about, you know, the review capabilities, or, you know,
Right, what's going to be, what's your strategy for getting information on the site above and beyond that this course exists, here's how to get there, here's how much it costs? Well, if somebody needs to be able to like really figure out, is this the right course for them? Do you have a means by which you're going to be able to connect them with other people taking the course, get reviews or kind of crowdsource feedback on the course itself on your site, or are people sort of on their own to figure out if this is the course for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. You want to take that, or do you want me to take it?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. It's there's lots of things you can do to figure out whether or not the class is for you, besides just ratings and reviews. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been on Yelp and TripAdvisor and all these places, and the first thing you need to do is figure out if that person is actually like you, and you sort of qualify the review. And I think we're carefully thinking about how we're going to do reviews. I think we're focused in the short term on how much data can we suss out, like the classroom style, the instructor information about their background or bios. Try to give you a lot of detail about the class itself. And that way, at least you can make a better decision and say, hey, I learned well in a classroom environment. I learned well from this style of instruction. So more just fact-driven, style-driven about what the class actually is. And then reviews, we're trying to figure it out. I think we want it to be a little bit more sophisticated than just somebody give you a handful of stars. We want to say, well, given what we know about you, this is the kind of review you need. But we obviously don't, we're trying to be Switzerland about it, and we're trying to bring other people into the equation and say, why don't you guys who have taken this class, we might have to verify that they took the class, just sort of qualify the review, but without trying to offer our own judgment on it. We're just trying to get people to, put theirs in. So we're thinking about it is the answer.
I mean, that's actually kind of a really interesting challenge. I mean, if you think about the education space, on the one hand, there have been a lot of services like Rate My Professor
Right.
out there for a long time, which are out of the control of the institutions and of the individuals. But if you look at what moves, if any, the institutions have embraced in this space, there are really very few, if any. In 2010, at MIT Sloan Executive Education, we started putting public ratings and reviews unedited of our non-degree courses up on our website. One thing is quite interesting, a lot of people still don't believe that they're unedited.
Right.
So there's a challenge there, and actually having an independent platform where that could happen would be, from my point of view, would be attractive. But interesting to note that none of our peers, or you might call them competitors, have made that same move for whatever reason.
It's another startup, right? Bizarre voice for education.
Yeah, and this brings forth an interesting, thing, because, I go to Yelp, I use Yelp a lot, and I rely on a lot of the reviews that they have. And if there's 360 reviews, I'm not going to take the time to read through all of them. They've got some sort of mechanism for saying this one's more relevant than this one, but I mean, who really knows? And it just becomes a question. I mean, should we be moving to the point where maybe the person who took the class isn't writing the review, but maybe the employer or someone who's validating that skill set should be the one writing the review, after the fact? I think it's a question.
I think we'll take that back and implement it on our site.
Yeah. I think it's just a question that we have of, how do you make sure reviews are valid? I think we got a question from the audience here.
So as you've alluded to, there's all different experiential learning types, and I think you're self-described as a kinesthetic learner. And are there any filters on your site to take into account whether something's like heavily math-focused or reading-focused or real hands-on types of coursework? So.
Yeah, that's not something that we have yet. I mean, it's something that we think about. We're trying to give consumers as much information as possible. We have, if you go to the class details page, we have a lot of information there on, is this class online? What are the prerequisites? So I think that's something that we'll look at trying to put in the prerequisites if we can structure the information, based on what we can gather from the provider website. And one of the things I think about is, with all the content explosion out there, is where's the greatest opportunity? I mean, do we think I think a lot of people on this panel have kids. Is it K through 12? Is it post-secondary? Is it, professional? Or is it just a lifestyle? I mean, lifestyle classes, pottery, jewelry, anything like that? Where's the biggest opportunity?
I mean, I think each go-to-market presents its own challenges. K-12 is very hard to monetize. Districts typically are the buyers, or you have to monetize with the parent. Higher ed, which is where my business is focused, is rich with opportunity because the students have funds to purchase course content. They're there to learn very specifically, and so they're investing in their education. I think post-college, career-oriented is also a wonderful space because the correlation between what you learn and the result, the return on that investment in the workforce is very tightly linked. Lifestyle learners, I think, is the most challenging in some ways. Jonathan Haber and I have obviously spoken about MOOCs, and you see the big drop-off between, and we were talking about that as well, registration and finishing, and there's just a wide variety of reasons why somebody might be looking to self-improve or learn just for their own gratification, and that's just a hard place to to monetize, to create a business in, I think.
Right, because it's kind of that spare time that you've got. And if you're willing to invest in yourself, and it becomes that self-motivation, that self-directed thing. How can we teach people to be very self-directed and learn on their own? Mike, one of the things that we see is a lot of companies like MongoDB starting to create their own MOOC platform. Any plans for anything like that at DataZoo?
Yeah, I mean, as I alluded to earlier, we have a sort of a junior varsity version of that. Like we have our own version 1 of a learning center, which is designed to just train and certify users of the software. What's interesting about, I think what companies like Mongo are doing is the idea of really building the learning into a community. Because that seems like the right place to go. Mm-hmm. And we haven't really talked about it here, but it's a key element of learning, right? There is a community. The community is the brand in some ways, if you think of a prestigious university, but also the community is part of the learning experience. And I think that's a really interesting area full of opportunity as sort of online learning progresses.
Yeah. And Peter, HBS just made their first MOOC. I think it's called HBX. Any plans for anything like that at MIT? I mean, give people a little taste of what you can get if you come to the executive education program. Try and entice them into taking some of the other courses.
Well, I think if anything, that's exactly the kind of approach that we're working on in that larger scale, lower touch kind of space at the moment. I think it's fairly unlikely that we will be taking our entire MBA curriculum and putting it out online anytime soon. And it's not even obvious to a lot of people at MIT whether that's the best thing for us to be doing, as opposed to really, to go to the question you were asking earlier, figuring out what's the truly unique content and learning that we can actually be bringing to the world, whether that's in fulfillment of our educational mission, which actually we do,
right.
we do take very much to heart. Or, as you say, a way of another way to engage people who will be drawn into the deeper and richer learning experiences that we're going to continue to be providing.
So, would you say that some of the stuff that's being put out there for free online right now, would you say it's a fair statement to say that that's kind of some more of your commoditized content versus more of your really value-added, deep learning opportunities?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are some really great sort of cutting-edge kinds of online sort of MOOC courses that have been coming out as well. And one of the challenges I think with that is the question of how do you keep it up to date? I mean, it's back to the problem that you were really started asking the question about, because that there is a shelf life for that. And if you look at a lot of the examples of those courses, we've just finishing one this week at MIT. You mentioned, I think earlier, the Bill Alett entrepreneurship course. Bill right now is struggling with the question of a lot of people are interested in continuing to have access to that, but how do we support that other than the few weeks when we were running that class?
Right.
And so the more kind of cutting edge stuff that even if it doesn't require high touch during the learning experience, may still require a lot of maintenance in order to keep it sort of cutting edge. And I think that's a challenge that institutions like ours are still trying to figure out the best way to achieve that. But we're in there experimenting and seeing what we can learn.
So on the whole, what do we think that this is going to do for cost and accessibility? Boundless has already done wonders for helping decrease the cost of textbooks. On the whole, post-secondary, tertiary or professional learning, What do we think it's going to do to the cost and accessibility of that?
I do have a friend who got a master's in computer science for $5,000.
Awesome.
And that was through one of the providers up there. So that's pretty impressive.
I'm guessing that's the Udacity, Georgia Tech course that you're talking about.
It was
Yeah.
Udacity.
Yeah, that's great. What about you guys?
I mean, the internet is great for consumers. We all win as the internet continues to grow, and companies like All Classes, Boundless, and others that are just driving down price and increasing access is just really a boon to consumers as well as global education.
So, I mean, tying this back into the last question a little bit, so when is online the best medium and when is offline for learning?
Well, there's no easy answer to that question. I think it depends on the individual and their learning preference. It depends on the nature of the content or the skill that you're trying to learn. My bias would be to say that things that are more technical in nature are more likely to be effective in using these online tools, and things that require real interaction between people and peers, even though you can do those things electronically, maybe are harder to make effective in an online setting, although we're experimenting all the time with different platforms and tools to do that as well. The other thing I was going to say in answer to your question that we might see is kind of a separation between content and experience when it comes to learning. And you know, whether you're talking about the flipped classroom model that edX and others have really been sort of pushing at the institutions that are part of the edX consortium, or even in the executive education space, I could well see that we will really try to focus what are the things that we really need to do with high touch and high engagement and in person, and that may well very often separate the experience of learning from sort of the content acquisition itself.
Right. I think we have a question from back there.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to, you mentioned talking about the credibility with this type of learning in these classes, and there's no real answer with that yet, but how do you guys, as employers yourself, how much weight do you put into these classes when you see potential hire with, a background in a lot of these classes and going through some of these courses?
I'll start first. When we see somebody that we like who seems to have the skills we want, but the brand is sort of unknown to us, we test. And if the person passes the test, then it's like, great. We have somebody like that who didn't finish high school, who's got a lot of skills, and it was just like, you give him a test, which is a hard test, and passed it in flying colors, so it sort of, no one really cares, after if you can, I think if you can quantify and objectify the skill in that fashion, which probably works more with technical skills, although we've also seen just in sort of things like account management, like a general sort of background job that requires good communication, but also sort of a certain fluency and just quantitative analysis, not like a master's in statistics. That can be tested as well, just through face-to-face interviews and giving somebody a simple problem to present back to you as they would talk to a customer. So we actually talk a lot about just how far into testing should we get across the board. It's something that comes out of, you do this with your developers, we always have, but then really we should be testing everybody. And that would actually change our thinking a little bit about traditional credentials. And it seems like things are going in that direction from my perspective.
Right. So looking at if you've got a developer saying give me access to your GitHub account. Let me look at what you've done. Or if you're a designer, what have you put on Dribbble so that I can go and see actual examples of your work. Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think we have time for one more question, so we'll go ahead and field this one.
Real quickly, Mike, I thought you brought up a great point about hiring this individual that didn't graduate high school and basically testing him upon to see if he'd be a good fit or not. I graduated college 4 years ago now from Northeastern, and it's getting to a point where it's very difficult for myself and probably a lot of people my age now going through it to justify the cost. I just don't think at $50,000 a year that it's worth it. Would you say that, and I'm a firm believer in technology, working for a integrative healthcare technology company, is that basically it's giving options to students graduating from high school basically being able to target what they want to get into. And I understand that there's a lot of people that don't know, including myself, but be able to target what they want and then being able to take classes through an all classes type platform. So basically you can be specific in what you're learning after high school, and then it can basically open the door for a job that, again, today, because we don't have the college diploma, and I call it the receipt, that it basically allows you to check off the box and say, hey, he's gone or she's gone through college, so she'll be a fine or he'll be a fine hire. Do you kind of see that going? Because the cost of college is, to be perfectly honest with you, egregious.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I as somebody paying for college now, you just really look at this and it's like, God, this is kind of crazy. I don't want to say it's a racket, but it has elements of that, and even what's being provided. I think there are social things being provided that are sort of distinct, actually, from the education. And I do think the community, to me, seems really important. But it doesn't really seem like it's fairly priced. I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. And I would also say that a lot of the sort of pockets of opportunity professionally, seem to be coming at the intersection of things, really the innovation areas. I mean, you can go and get an accounting degree and work, with like 1,000 other people, like, at State Street, I mean, like those kind of jobs. But then, like, actually, it's a higher paying job to get into user experience design, except who teaches that? Well, it's kind of a mashup of a couple of different disciplines. And that's it's a great example of a new field that's high paying and high growth that really doesn't come out of the $50,000 a year degree. So if somebody knew that they wanted to work in that, I could imagine compiling a list of classes and disciplines at places like MIT, big brands for some of this, as well as more specific sort of skill training. And I think that's going to be more and more viable, because what choice do people have when you start to look at the cost benefit of investing $200,000?
Yeah, I just talked to one of the members of our audience earlier. He's sending 4 kids through college right now. So he was joking. Here's my car keys. We're leveraging everything to get him through. So, guys, thank you so much for showing up. This is a great panel, and we're going to have some site demos available. So if anybody wants to go tinker on the site and come up and talk to some of the members of our panelists, get some more answers to your questions, feel free. Thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah.